All right, so some more on the Roe v. Wade story, this time with Senator Rand Paul. Senator Paul, welcome, as always, sir.
Glad to be with you.
Just off the top, what do you make of it? What did you hear? What are you thinking about this?
Well, you know, I don't know if I can make a final comment on an opinion that's a preview of an opinion, which is unusual in and of itself. But if the opinion is going to be that the court is now going to defend the right to life, I'm all for that. As far as leaking it early, I think that in all likelihood is done from someone on the left wing who wants to agitate. I also am concerned that this could put our justices' lives in danger. I think having a prolonged rollout of this and pressure put on them with daily demonstrations, I think there is a risk to our justices getting them in and out of the building, and I hope it won't be, but I think it's a terrible thing, whoever did leak this, because it does breach not only the decorum, but I think it may add to the risk that our justices have to encounter.
Senator Paul, wouldn't it be better at this point now, the cat's out of the bag, there is going to be an opinion and there is going to be a decision, to get it done, you know, rather sooner than later?
Yeah, I think so, but I don't really know or want to dictate what the policy of the Supreme Court is on how they make their decisions. My understanding is, you know, sometimes they write an opinion, they vote on it, then to get one more vote, they may alter the opinion a certain degree, or if they don't have enough votes, or if it's a split vote. So I don't know where they are in the process. I would say if they're at the end of the process, waiting another month or two will be disruptive for the country. But I think it also will put them at risk because there will be more likely to be people who have anger and emotional issues that may show up at the Supreme Court that I think could be dangerous for justices. So I think the sooner the better on this, but I'm not one to stand here and dictate to them how to do their job. They'll have to figure that out. But I think there at least are some arguments for speeding up the process rather than delaying it in any way.
And Senator, in terms of Alito's logic, which is to say unelected justices should not determine this important social policy, better to let the voters decide in the states, in elections, what do you make of that?
Well, I think also the argument is made that there is no enumerated power in the Constitution to deal with this. And that's true of a lot of things. And so things that aren't enumerated and specifically given to the federal government, the 10th Amendment says, are left to the states and the people, respectively. So, yeah, I think most of the issues of our day actually should be done at the state level. But this is one. And we have no other issues of criminality where we say, you know, abusing your children is a crime, abusing a baby in the womb is a crime. So any other thing that we have like that is dealt typically at the state level, not the federal level. And the federal is the exception to the rule, not the rule. So, no, I think it would be consistent with our history to actually have it done at the state level. In some ways, it may make the transition to a post-Roe v. Wade situation more comfortable for some people, because there still will be some states who reject restrictions on abortion. That would be, I would think, California and New York. The very blue states are going to want no restrictions or unlimited abortion. And I think they will still continue to have that. And the more conservative states, I think, are going to have restrictions, more restrictions on abortion, maybe than we've seen in the past. But people should also realize this isn't brand new. The Supreme Court has allowed restrictions in the past. This decision may allow more restrictions, but it isn't as if we didn't already have some restrictions on abortion.
Oh, no, absolutely. By the way, I was going to add Connecticut to your blue list. Connecticut just passed a bill, and the governor signed it, making it the most hospitable state for abortions, I guess. Senator, can I jump shift? I want to go to George Orwell's Ministry of Truth, about which I'm sure you're quite familiar now after the goings-on before the SCOTUS leak. And I wanted to know, in the Senate, I'm reading a very good article on the Federalist by woman Bovard, Ms. Bovard. Senate Rule 14, you can put legislative directly onto the Senate calendar. A motion to proceed would require a Senate vote and 51 votes. Can you defund this misinformation government board that way?
Yeah, I've tried it before. Not this particular board, but I've tried that maneuver before. And usually it gets me sent to a back room for a browbeating. They put me in a hot box, sweat and blood comes out of different pores. And then they bring me back all beleaguered and say, oh, he won't do it again for at least 6 months. But no, you can. There's a way to bring legislation to the floor. It's not as easy as it sounds, though. because the majority leader has the right of first refusal to the floor. Basically, he always can, if he wants to, dominate the floor. But the author, Miss Rachel Bovard, of that actually used to work for me, so she does know the rules of the Senate, and she's very familiar with the tactic. But yeah, I think we should do things like that, and we should try to make things like this come to the public debate. I mean, do you think really any kind of majority of the public wants the government to decide what information is correct and incorrect and to censor that information and to put some Looney Tunes woman in charge of that who's out there tweeting and singing her way to hysteria saying, oh, there's too much free spirit in America. Maybe we should use force away on these people and lock them down. Really? That's the kind of even-keeled person they're going to have in charge of the Ministry of Truth? Orwell couldn't make this stuff up. This is, but it's amazing that it's being proposed, and it's also disturbing that so many on the left actually think censorship is the answer, and they're worried and afraid of freedom of speech.
Senator Paul, aren't you impressed, really, that I found in my research last night for this show and your guest appearance, Rachel Bovard on The Federalist? I didn't know
incredible.
I didn't
incredible.
I didn't know she worked for you, but I thought you were the perfect person for Senate Rule 14 anyway. All right. Thank you, sir. It's great to see you again.
Thank you.
Come back.